Welcome back to the Story Lab. Today, we dive once more into the Star Wars universe, but this time into the prequel era. Specifically, we want to talk about Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Star Wars: The Clone Wars is a beloved series, with many great characters and some of the most thrilling storylines in the universe. But the series had some growing pains, with clunky animation and unfocused stories, and both heroes and villains showing up without introduction. One of the worst stories is arguably the movie that started it all, the Star Wars: The Clone Wars movie. Let us correct that by writing a new Clone Wars starter movie. We can start with our list of ingredients right away. What we want in our movie is more focus on the clones and their journey, as that is one of the most beloved aspects of the TV series. Then, a story clearly set the story in the first months of the Clone Wars, which wasn't the case in the original, as they only later made the decision of setting this at the beginning of the war rather than in the third year. More time to get to know the villains. More realistic battles. And our overall goal is to set up the themes and morals of the series. Let's focus on the point about the clones a bit more. Throughout the Clone Wars series, we get to know the clones very well, understand their struggle and the tragedy of their ultimate fate. The clones grow up throughout the series, becoming seasoned veterans, independent thinkers, and finally some even grow beyond their original programming. Our new starter movie should be the starting point of that journey, especially for the clones in the 501st Legion. But we cannot just change everything about that first movie. Several important events and characters we need to keep, because they are referenced or appear again later. Here is a quick list of things we have to keep. Ahsoka's arrival. Ventress as the main villain. The Battle of Christoph Sis. The Battle of Tess. The conflict over the use of Hutt space. Zero the Hutt. Anakin finding his old ship, the Twilight. And then we have the Hutt baby. Jabba's son appears one more time when someone refers to him as Jabba's son. But since that is the only time, we might be good to leave that aspect of the old movie out. Then, there is that one episode with Slick the Clone Deserter, which plays out directly before the Battle of Christoph Sis. Unfortunately, if we try to keep that episode in, we are very restricted in what we can change about the entire first act of the movie. So, for this experiment, we will ignore this one episode. Okay, with that we have the complete list of ingredients ready. Here is a quick recap. More focus on the clones and their journey. Clearly set the story in the first months of the Clone Wars. More time to get to know the villains. More realistic battles. Overall goal, set up the themes and morals of the series, the clones' journey. Ahsoka's arrival. Ventress as the main villain. The Battle of Christoph Sis. The Battle of Tess. The Hutt secret hyperspace route. Zero the Hutt. Anakin finding the Twilight. Let's put it all in and analyze the mixture. The movie opens on the planet Kamino. A huge battalion of clones is waiting in the endless rain. All the clones are exactly the same, all with the same unmarked helmet, all with the exact same posture, etc. The only one that is different is the clone captain, who has blue markings on his helmet. It is Captain Rex. The clones are waiting for something, looking up into the sky. And as the camera focuses up as well, a huge metallic body appears over them. It is the belly of a Republic Star Destroyer, a Venator-class ship, an impressive sight, but the clones hardly react. The huge belly of the ship comes into position over them and lowers a ramp. Then, on a single command from Captain Rex, the clones all turn towards the ramp. Rex positions himself on it and informs the clones that they, the 501st Legion, were being deployed to Christoph Sis to fight alongside General Skywalker. Then, he turns around and enters the ship, the clones following him without a word. This is the opening scene of the movie. As the Venator leaves Camino behind, we transition into the opening titles of the movie and an opening crawl that informs us that we are in the original days of the Clone Wars, that Anakin Skywalker has been promoted to Jedi Knight in order to serve as a general in the war, and that the Republic and Separatists are both currently trying to get the Hutt's permission to use their space for military operations. This is reflected in the first scene, where the Jedi Masters are discussing the matter with the Chancellor in his office on Coruscant. After a bit of discussion, it is decided to send the negotiator Obi-Wan Kenobi to Tatooine to talk to Jabba the Hutt. However, Obi-Wan is currently still locked in the Battle of Christoph Sis. Yoda prepares a relief effort to be sent to the planet. We then get to see the battle of a part of the Battle of Christoph Sis play out. Hundreds of clones, fighting thousands of battle droids. Just as in the original movie, Kenobi and Cody are leading the main defense on the ground, while Anakin is up in one of the towers with his battalion, planning a flanking attack. But before Anakin and his troops can begin their attack, someone sneaks into the building. At first, we only see her as a shadow. She runs around and kills clones, using 2 red lightsabers. We realize that it is Asajj Ventress. Anakin, focused on the battle below, reacts to her almost too late, stopping her blade just before she cuts down Rex. Anakin and Ventress fight. From the light banter between them we learn who Ventress is and that she works for Count Dooku. As the fight continues, the clones are trying to find an opening to come to Anakin's aid, but they do not see a chance. Anakin, on the other hand, feels that he has the upper hand in the duel, but is surprised when Ventress manages to jump him and slices his face with the lightsaber. Anakin falls to the ground. This finally gives the clones the opening they had been looking for. Fleeing the blaster fire, Ventress escapes. Rex has Anakin taken back to the camp to tend to his face wound. In the meantime, Obi-Wan loses a lot of men and has to fall back, ceding that part of the street to the Separatists. Luckily, the Republic forces are saved when a wave of gunships arrives from orbit. Master Yoda's first relief troops have arrived. The droids retreat and Kenobi greets the Republic forces. Among them is a young girl, Ahsoka Tano. Back at the Republic camp, Anakin's wound is treated and reduced to just a small scar, the one we know from the rest of the series and the movie. During the treatment, Anakin is talking sternly to Rex. He asks why the clone abandoned the attack on the clones. That would have relieved Obi-Wan. Rex doesn't understand. They had defended their commanding officer. Anakin explains that a single clone would have been enough to help him, not the entire battalion had had to stay behind. But Rex is still confused. Anakin had not given the order to start the attack, thus Rex and his men never even had the idea to do so. Anakin explains that he doesn't require absolute obedience. In fact, he wants Rex to think for himself. Rex is apprehensive towards the idea, but accepts it. At this point, Kenobi and Ahsoka arrive at the camp. Everybody gets introduced. Ahsoka informs the Jedi generals that a Republic task force is in orbit, driving away the Separatist blockade, and that they would land as soon as they could. She had gone ahead to join up with her master-to-be. We then get the scene where it is revealed that Ahsoka is assigned to Anakin. From here on, the first act of the movie plays out along the same lines as the original. Anakin and Ahsoka go on a mission behind enemy lines to deactivate the droid forces, while Obi-Wan and the clones defend their camp. Obi-Wan does not fake surrender, instead this time, he faces Ventress when she comes in as the leader of the droid army. In addition, we see Rex leading his battalion, trying to implement Anakin's conceal and be a bit innovative, which turns out pretty well, as he manages to keep the big guns protected. The battle ends shortly before Yoda and the rest of the relief troops arrive. The droids are defeated, but Ventress managed to escape. Now, finally, Obi-Wan is given the order to go to Tatooine and talk to Jabba. For Anakin, Yoda has a different job. He is to follow Asajj Ventress and try to capture her. In the second act of the movie, we follow the original even more closely. Obi-Wan travels to Tatooine, but finds Jabba and his family rather uncooperative. Jabba even goes as far as to state that he would not negotiate with any Jedi. Obi-Wan relays this message to Coruscant. The Chancellor then decides to send Senator Amidala to talk to Jabba instead. However, as Obi-Wan leaves to go help Anakin, we the audience get to see what is really going on in Jabba's palace. Jabba's uncle Zero the Hutt has made a secret deal with none other than Count Dooku, who is present on Tatooine. As far as Zero is concerned, the Hutts have already joined with the Separatists. Meanwhile, on the planet Tess, Anakin and Ahsoka have located Asajj's hideout in an old temple. Their gunships are shot at on the approach to the temple, and they have to deploy their forces on the ground of the purple planet. They then start climbing the stone pillar and take the temple. During the battle, we again see two relationships play out. Anakin and Ahsoka are getting used to one another, and at the same time, Rex is trying to think more for himself, though he still keeps confirming every order with Anakin before giving it. When they have reached the top and taken over the courtyard, Anakin decides that he and Ahsoka would enter the temple alone. Rex asks what he and the troops should do. Anakin simply says he trusts Rex to come up with that on his own, leaving the clone captain quite perplexed. On Tatooine, Padme arrives at Jabba's palace and starts negotiating with him. During the first round of negotiations, the clever woman realizes that something is wrong. But before she or the Senate guards can react, Zero activates a carefully prepared trap and imprisons Padme in the dungeons of the palace. Then, Dooku comes over to talk to her. At the same time, on Tess, Asajj Ventress is very close to being found by Anakin and Ahsoka. Luckily for Asajj, the two are currently having a bit of a fight. She uses this moment to tap her comlink and signal Count Dooku for help. Dooku, being in the middle of his back and forth with Padme, tries to shut Asajj down, but the damage is already done. Anakin and Ahsoka have found the dark side apprentice and have heard that Padme is captured. Again, Asajj escapes and she activates a couple of droideckers to keep the two Jedi from following her. At this point though, Obi-Wan and his fleet drop out of hyperspace over the planet, descending towards planet. Seeing that, Anakin's priorities shift immediately. He and Ahsoka rush to an old ship, the Twilight, and leave for Tatooine to go and save Padme. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan comes down to the palace and engages Ventress. Rex, still standing around in the courtyard, asks Obi-Wan what he should do. Obi-Wan, in the heat of battle, just tells him to stay put. Anakin is not particularly diplomatic, as he reaches Tatooine together with Ahsoka. He simply storms into Jabba's palace and confronts the Hutt. Naturally, Jabba arrests Anakin and his Padawan. Ahsoka, acting quickly, manages to get her activate her comm, signaling Captain Rex, so that the clone can hear what is going on. Now comes Rex's big moment. Fighting with himself, Rex decides to go against the direct orders to stay put and instead simply leave with his clones and travel to Tatooine to go save Anakin. We thus enter the third act, which plays out primarily on Tatooine. Dooku has now come out to the open and is using the Jedi intrusion on Jabba as evidence that the Jedi are not the right partners for the Hutts, proposing that the Hutt should officially take the Separatist side. Jabba is almost fully convinced at this point. Meanwhile, on Tess, Obi-Wan and Ventress finish their long duel, with Ventress once again escaping, though both promise each other that this was not their last fight. Obi-Wan then realizes that Rex and the 501st Battalion have disappeared. He asks Yularen where they went. When he hears that they left for Tatooine, Obi-Wan decides to follow them with the fleet. On Tatooine, outside among the dunes, Rex and the clones have landed their ships and are proceeding on foot to the palace. On the way they realize strange antennae protruding from the ground. Searching around for a bit, they realize that Jabba's entire palace is surrounded by them. We of course recognize the design from earlier in the movie. These are droids hidden underground. Rex and the clones proceed carefully past them, then sneak into the palace through an access hatch and reach the dungeons. Anakin is very happy to see them. The clones free the Jedi and Padme from their cells. Zero the Hutt tries to stop them, but he is no match for two Jedi and a battalion of clones. Through the access hatch they all sneak out again, but are stopped by Count Dooku. Dooku brings them before Jabba as final proof that the Republic are the enemy of the Hutts. Padme tries to defend the Republic, but it is Rex who steps up and changes the situation when he tells Jabba that a real ally would not feel the need to hide an army of droids outside in case Jabba didn't accept. Jabba immediately demands to know whether this is true. The clones want to prove it by activating one of the droids, but Dooku acts first. He activates all of them, and we see that they would easily be enough to overwhelm our heroes. But at that moment, Obi-Wan arrives with the entire fleet and blasts the droids away. Dooku and Zero try to escape, but Ahsoka and Anakin, now finally working together, stop Zero and turn him over to Padme. Jabba thanks the Jedi and agrees to be on the side of the Republic. And that's the whole movie. The new movie follows nearly the same plot as the original with only a few but crucial changes. There is no Hutt baby involved in the story. Zero the Hutt is not manipulating events from Coruscant but directly from Jabba's palace. Asajj Ventress is present on Christoph Sis and is the one being chased to Tess. In addition to Anakin and Ahsoka learning to work together, Captain Rex also has a character arc. He learns to think for himself and do the right thing even against orders. Please note that everything presented here is simply the results of an experiment. No part of this presentation is intended as a correction of an existing story or claims to be the real story. The selection or omission of any parts of the source material is not to be understood as commentary, positive or negative, on the original productions. These are simply thoughts and experiments based on existing material, and none of it could be created without the work of all those involved in creating the original works. As with any scientific result, you may utilize any of the story ideas that resulted from these experiments for your own experiments or production, while citing this experiment as its source. It is now closing time for our lab. Goodbye until next time.